Here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, Scott Wright is the president of DraftCountdown.com. We will get his take on everything that has occurred, Pete Thompson, which so far has been pretty wild. And we had a lot of quarterbacks, 5 of them taken in that first round, 4 in the top 10 for the first time in the common draft era. Baker Mayfield went to the Browns at number 1 overall. So let's start there with Scott Wright of DraftCountdown.com. And right off the bat, the Browns were criticized. There was 5 or 4 options for some to take it number 1. What did you think of their decision, Scott, to go with Baker Mayfield?
I think they made the absolute riskiest decision they possibly could have. I had Baker Mayfield as my number 4 quarterback and number 20 player overall. So obviously I'm not a huge fan of the pick, and I'm not a hater by any stretch. I kind of dig, Baker Mayfield's personality and stuff, but he is going to have to be an exception to so many rules to justify being a top 5 pick, let alone the number 1 overall pick in the draft. And I just think he's really got the odds stacked against him. I just can't fathom either how you can evaluate him and Sam Darnold and come away to the conclusion, let's go with Baker Mayfield, because really the NFL draft process, it's about information gathering, and the reason you gather that information is so you can weed out problems, find these red flags. And it seems like the Browns just wanted to collect them. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And Baker Mayfield, he's fun to watch. I'm rooting for him, but like I said, I think the odds are stacked against him.
Now, Scott, try to take us inside the thought process here, because for me, Cleveland, could they really have Baker Mayfield graded that much higher than any of the other quarterbacks, where they couldn't just say, you know what, we'll take the guy we like the best at number 1 and whatever quarterback's left over for us? I mean, does this tell you that they Mayfield significantly higher than the others?
Well, in their defense, I think the Jets at 3, he was the favorite to go there. That's where I had him going in my final mock draft. I think the Broncos were looking at him at 5. He was the quarterback that they liked after Sam Darnold. So, there were other landing spots. It's not like they took a second-round pick, number 1 overall. He was going in the top 5 overall regardless. But, I mean –
Right, but if they take a player, if they take a Barkley or a Chubb, or obviously they didn't like Chubb because they passed on him at number 4, but if they took a player, a position player, non-quarterback at 1, that means Darnold, Mayfield, Rosen, all would have been there at 2 or 3, and that when 4 came around, they still would have had a choice. And you would think that if Darnold was there for the Jets in Baker Mayfield, do you think they would have gone with Darnold over Mayfield?
I think they would have went with Darnold, and that's one thing that's a little disconcerting. It would be disconcerting to me if I were a fan of the Browns, that all these other teams were clamoring to take Darnold. The first team that had a chance to do it, that needed a quarterback, they did it, and there were other ones chomping at the bit behind him. He was the guy Denver wanted. Some teams are talking about trading up, trying to get him. So that's definitely a little disconcerting. But no, if they wanted Baker Mayfield, they probably had to take him at number 1, because I think I'm fine with that. I mean, I tried, as a rule, I try not to criticize teams for what they do at the quarterback position, because I'd rather see them do this than take Cody Kessler in the 3rd round or something like that, a guy who profiles as a career backup. So at least they're trying and they're swinging. But so I think you had to take the quarterback there. You figure out which one you like the best and you take them. And I think what it comes down to is they think he's going to be Brett Favre. And that is obviously the best case scenario. Who doesn't want Brett Favre, right? But let's not forget, Brett Favre did not have an easy go with it early in his career. Atlanta basically ran him out of town after 1 year. I'm not so sure how Brett Favre would have fared in the days of social media now, with cell phone cameras everywhere in his younger days. So I just think it's a huge, huge leap of faith to think you're going to get anything close to Brett Favre with Baker Mayfield, because Brett Favre, he was the exception, not the rule.
Scott Wright, DraftCountdown.com. So let's stick with the Browns while we're on them. Denzel Ward is at 4. I would like to know Scott Wright's reaction when that announcement is made.
I just just kind of laughed a little bit. And there again, I mean, I can defend it. It's not the worst pick in the world. There were other teams in the top 10 that very well could have taken him, whether it was the Buccaneers at 7, the Bears at 8, and he was clearly the best corner in this draft. Nobody debated that. But was he the 4th best player in this draft? No. I mean, he wasn't as good as Marshawn Lattimore, who went 11th last year, but I had Marshawn Lattimore going number 5 overall in my final mock draft last year, and if they had taken Marshawn Lattimore at number 4 this year, I'm fine with that. I mean, they desperately needed a corner. Marshawn Lattimore is a legitimate top 5 overall talent. I just don't see that with Denzel Ward. You hear comparisons to Pac-Man Jones, to Vernon Hargreaves. Is that one of the top 5 players in the draft? I guess I would just want to aim higher if I were the Browns. You could have got the guy most considered to be the best defensive player in this draft, Bradley Chubb, who plays a premium position. So I didn't like the pick, but ultimately that pales in comparison to number 1. It all comes down to number 1. So that's fine. They reached a little bit at number 4 to address a need. It happens in the draft. The Mayfield pick at number 1, that's going to be the story of the Browns draft and really dictate what happens for the next half a decade for them. And I said in my analysis last night of you got that old saying about how you take lemons and turn them into lemonade. I think the Browns kind of took lemonade and turned them into lemons because they had this golden opportunity, and I think they came away with like one of the least inspiring combinations they possibly could have.
Yeah, at 4, like you said, not Chubb, not Nelson, all kinds of names out there that did not come out of their mouths at 4. But, Scott, I want to ask you, when Darnold was on the board for the Giants, did you think they would take him over Barkley at number 2?
I didn't. I think they had zeroed in on Barkley. They had made it pretty clear how they liked him. But if there was one quarterback that would have made them change their mind, it was Darnold. He was the quarterback they liked. They weren't considering any other quarterback in number 2 overall than Sam Darnold. So there again, Browns fans, basically everybody was lining up behind you for Sam Darnold. So we're going to see. It's one of the biggest leaps of faith. And I know what? I've thought about this, but I think it's the biggest leap of faith I've seen in the NFL draft in the 20 years I've been covering it. Everything has to go right with Baker Mayfield for him to justify this. And it kind of boggles my mind, but I guess kudos to them. They stuck to their guns, and they're doing it their way for better or worse.
So are the Jets the happiest team today?
Oh, they got to be elated. And, I bet they couldn't have fathomed that when they made this trade a month ago, that I'm sure they had resigned themselves, said, hey, worst case scenario, there's a chance we could get our 3rd quarterback. We could have 2 quarterbacks to go ahead of us. So the fact that they got the best quarterback in the draft at number 3 was terrific, and I just hope they're patient with him. And I think they will be. I think Josh McCown, they couldn't ask for a better guy to tutor him and bring Sam Darnold along. You got to remember, he's a redshirt sophomore. He's only 20 years old. So the longer they can kind of put him in the incubator, the better. But, boy, I mean, they might have hit the lottery last night.
We're talking with Scott Wright, draftcountdown.com. So then at number 5, when Chubb is on the board for the Broncos, that kind of changed a lot. A lot of people said, all right, do they take a quarterback? But I guess they look at Bradley Chubb and say this was just too good of a situation to pass up because the Browns biffed again.
Yeah, and, you often hear in the NFL draft world, best player available. We're going to take the best player available. But that usually means best player available at a position of need. But there were a couple instances last night where I think teams were kind of true to the word and or true to that phrase. And it's definitely the Broncos at 5. That was far from their most pressing need. And now they've got some work to do later in the draft to shore up some of those areas that they didn't address. But boy, I mean, the best defensive player of the draft and just a safe pick. Even if the upside isn't crazy high, like a Jadeveon Clowney or Myles Garrett, there's no way this guy's not going to play in the league for 10 years at that position. I mean, that was a steal for them. And then also the Miami Dolphins at number 11, taking Minkah Fitzpatrick. It's not that they couldn't use his help, but I didn't think it was priority 1 or even priority 2 for them. So I think it speaks to, every once in a while when one of these guys does slip, we see something unorthodox, and I think both of those moves were smart by those teams.
And then we got Indianapolis going with Nelson, the guard from Notre Dame, that many people thought might have been the best overall player in the draft. But funny that they go offensive guard at number 6, finally, for Andrew Luck, who missed the entire season because he's been beat up so much because they've had no offensive line.
Yeah, they got somebody in there who knows what they're doing and figure, well, maybe we'll protect our billion-dollar asset behind center. And I love this pick. I was one of those people who had Quentin Nelson as my number one player in the entire draft, the best true guard prospect I've seen in the 20 years I've been covering it. And I said as soon as the draft order was established that when the Colts were picking at 3, I said that's the guy I'd be taking. So the fact that they'd be able to trade down to 6, pick up 3 more second-rounders, and get Nelson it just couldn't have worked out any better. And boy, they are set up to really clean house tonight now. They have 3 second-round picks. They're going to get 3 guys that were arguably first-rounders and guys that can step in and it should be instant starters for the Colts, who have needs really all over that defense. And, you know, something special could be happening there. It reminds me a little bit of a couple of years ago. I'd be watching the draft, and I see the Jaguars. They're taking Jalen Ramsey. They're taking Miles Jack. They're taking Leonard Fournette. And, boy, it could be a similar type of thing happening there. If Andrew Luck is healthy, the Colts are going to turn this around really, really quick because they finally have a general manager who knows what he's doing, apparently.
Well, it's 7, Scott. Buffalo moves up and takes a quarterback named Josh. It was Josh Allen, though. Did you like their decision to move up? Is he a good fit for them? Considering you could argue the weather in Wyoming, the weather in Buffalo, they're pretty similar.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good fit. It's definitely riskier than Josh Rosen, but the upside is much higher. And I think in that specific situation for Buffalo, you can make a really good case for Josh Allen. And A.J. McCarron they brought in to be a veteran stopgap, and we'll see. I mean, A.J. McCarron, I won't completely write him off, but Josh Allen, he's going to need some developmental time. And once again, the longer they can wait before throwing him into the fire, the better. And if A.J. McCarron can kind of get them through a year, that's going to just be huge for Josh Allen's development. So a good job by the Bills in the last 12 months or so. You look at what their situation at quarterback was a year ago to where it is now. At least now they have a couple of guys that could be starters in the NFL, including Josh Allen, who it could be as physically talented as any quarterback in the entire league. So the Bills got their quarterback. I mean, that's what they were doing. I had them trading up into the top 10 in my final mock draft. We knew that was going to happen, just like the Cardinals, and it was just a matter of who they were going to go after. And I don't blame them for going with Josh Allen. I think it's a huge risk. He's the definition of a boom or bust type of prospect, but if you don't have a franchise quarterback, you got to swing for the fences sometimes.
And at 8, the Bears had a situation where they might have been looking for some protection for Trubisky, and Quentin Nelson came off the board, so instead they go to the linebacker, Roquan Smith, out of Georgia. Do you like that pick for the Bears at 8?
Yeah, once Quentin Nelson came off the board, I think it was pretty clear the Bears would shift their attention to the defense, and it was just a matter of whether it would be a linebacker or a defensive back. And they brought in Roquan Smith, who can, be the new generation of Mike Singletary there. I mean, I know that's a big name in Chicago, but that's the kind of expectations you have for Roquan Smith when you take him where you do, because it's somewhat rare for a player like him to go that early, an off-the-ball linebacker who's not also a great pass rusher. Luke Kuechly was the number 9 overall pick, so that's kind of where the bar is. And I think Roquan Smith is up to the task. He is a really good football player, and he's what that Bears defense needed. He's going to bring speed, athleticism, and playmaking ability to that defensive front 7, and also he's going to be that field general. So really good pick by the Bears.
Now, at 9, the Niners went with Mike McGlinchey. And I don't know, Scott, if it's on the same level as like when Donovan McNabb got booed by Eagles fans at the draft, but I did see video of the Niners draft party, and there didn't seem to be a lot of enthusiasm from Niner fans out there. Do you like that pick for the Niners? And is it another case of the fan base of their team just not thinking it's a sexy pick?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think, no fan base really likes to tackle. Although I'll give credit to the Chicago Bear fans. Before the draft, I saw a poll on Twitter asking who they wanted, and Quentin Nelson was winning overwhelmingly. So respect to Bears fans for appreciating that offensive line play. But, sometimes the right decision isn't always the popular one, and I think McGlinchey was the right decision for the 49ers, and there's so much hope and optimism there right now, and rightfully so, but it all hinges on Jimmy Garoppolo. So anything they can do to make his life easier, is a wise investment, and now they get a plug-and-play starter at right tackle who's going to be an upgrade there, and might even have the ability to kick over to the left side in a year or two and replace Joe Staley. So a very safe pick, and you got to protect Jimmy Garoppolo. As long as you do that, everything else is going to fall into place for the 49ers. They've got the train on the tracks. They just got to avoid hitting anything now.
We're talking with Scott Wright of DraftCountdown.com, taking a look back at the top 10 in this NFL draft. And did Sam Bradford get Sam Bradford again? Did the Cardinals know that they were going to be able to make a move to get a guy like Josh Rosen? I mean, Bradford's gone through this before.
Yeah, just a great situation for the Arizona Cardinals. I don't think it could have worked out any better for them. They were able to trade up for the quarterback, and it wasn't that costly. It's number 10 overall pick, and they got the guy who's most pro-ready. I mean, he's ready to start week 1 if they need him, and I wouldn't rule that out. And we know Sam Bradford wasn't the long-term solution, so I think it was a great move. Usually, I mean, you could make an argument that he was a number 1 overall pick type of talent. The only question mark with him is, the intangibles. But even if you get a young Jay Cutler, is that the worst thing in the world? I'd rather have a young Jay Cutler than Sam Bradford at this stage in his career, especially. So it's one of my favorite picks of the first round, and I really believe 5-10 years from now we're going to look back and there's going to be 1 or 2 of these quarterbacks that went ahead of him. We're going to say, how did that happen?
By the way, you look at the NFC East here, Scott. You've got the Giants, who we talked about with Barkley, but the Redskins and Cowboys both went defense. The Redskins, for the second straight year, go with a Alabama defensive lineman. Deron Payne is theirs, the tackle, and Leighton Vander Esch goes to the Cowboys, the linebacker. So the NFC East adding a couple of defensive players.
Yeah, and those picks were 2 of the more anticlimactic picks in the first round, I think, because in Washington, everybody knew that they were coveting a nose tackle, and Vita Vea was the guy they wanted, but he went off the board 1 pick earlier, but that didn't let that deter them. They just went to the next guy on the list, and that was Deron Payne from Alabama, who deserved to go that early. He was right in the middle of the first round, and he's much more athletic and physically talented than what we've come to expect from Alabama defensive linemen in recent years. I think that's important to note. He's got a lot of upside, and so and then the Dallas Cowboys taking Leighton Vander Esch, the outside linebacker from Boise State. I mean, of all the picks, if I was gonna bet on one before the draft, that's the one I would have bet on, and he was a popular name. There were teams in the back half of the first round that at one point were hoping he would fall to them. But ultimately, he didn't get past the Cowboys. They snagged him up as soon as they had the opportunity, and he's exactly what they're looking for. They needed some help at linebacker after losing Anthony Hitchens, and also because Jalen Smith and Sean Lee have durability issues. So he's going to come in and be their insurance policy, and he's a really good football player. He's not particularly flashy, but he's a guy who never has to leave the field, and that's a valuable commodity as a linebacker in this day and age.
Scott Wright, Draft Countdown. Let's go to the back end. Philadelphia 32. They get out. Ravens jump in. Lamar Jackson. Number 1, how much was Lamar Jackson being there at 32 helpful to the Eagles to gain some leverage to make that move? And number 2, did you like what Philly did? They essentially still only have the 6 picks, but they added a second-rounder for next year. So this is Howie Roseman saying, I'm okay with my roster for 2018, but I know we're going to need more help in 2019, so I'll take that second rounder. Did you like Roseman's move, and how much was Jackson still being there pivotal for somebody wanting to make a deal with Philadelphia?
Well, anytime a quarterback's in the equation, it changes the landscape, right? And that's certainly the case, sure. I think he got a premium for that pick and was able to get more for it because it was a team coming up for a quarterback, and I think it was a smart move by them. Not only did they accumulate a nice future asset, but they're going to be looking at the same grade of player in the middle of the second round as they would have been at the last pick of the first round. I personally had 19 first-round grades in this class, so by the end of the first round, theirs might have been out. And the strength of this draft is tonight, day 2, round 3. That's why these teams want to stockpile these picks. Pretty much all throughout the entire second round, you're going to get players who were at least at one point talked about as potential first rounders. So, and then right on down the line, you're going to get second rounders in the third rounders in the fourth round. So this is a really deep draft, and this is where some of these organizations are going to make hay. Last night was the flash, but this is really the substance, and there are starters available at just about every position all throughout the next 2 rounds.
He's Scott Wright, the president of DraftCountdown.com. Scott, give us a couple of names tonight, your favorite players that are available here on day 2 that are still on the board, and any guys that you were surprised that did not make it into round 1.
Yeah, and I actually got the list of the best available up on the site. You can check that out. I have the top 10, but I actually had 3 players still available that I had first-round grades on. The first was Harold Landry, the outside linebacker from Boston College. Just a dynamic threat off the edge, explosive speed and quickness. I think he's going to hear his name pretty quickly. Number 2, Will Hernandez, the offensive guard from UTEP, one of my personal favorite prospects in this draft. Just a big, physical, nasty, mauling offensive lineman, and I don't see how he gets past the Giants at 66. Their general manager claims he loves those hog mollies. They need a blocker. That seems like a match made in NFL draft heaven. And then number 3, James Daniels, center from Iowa. We saw 2 centers go in the first round last night, and I actually thought Daniels was better than both of them. And that's no disrespect to both of those guys. They were legitimately right in the mix, but I thought Daniels would be the first off the board. So all 3 of those guys I had first-round grades on. They're still available. But you look through the list of the guys who I still have available in my top 10, Darius Geis. I mean, there's at one point somewhere debating, is he better than Saquon Barkley? Is he going to be a top 10 pick? He's available. It's kind of like Dalvin Cook last year. So just a whole lot of talent. And check out that list on the website. I think people will be surprised by some of the names.
Yeah, and for our southern regional listeners up about 40 minutes up the Parkway here, Mike Gesicki go tonight?
He might. And you know, I before the draft, I thought maybe he could sneak into the back end round 1 simply for no other reason than only 2 other tight ends have tested better than him in the history of the combine since they've been tracking it. And that was Vernon Davis and Dustin Keller, and they both went in the first round. So only 1 tight end off the board so far. That was Hayden Hurst, went to the Ravens late in round 1. I think next is going to be Dallas Goedert from South Dakota State, but then I think Gesicki will be next, whether it's the middle of round 2, maybe the end of round 2. But he could be in play maybe as early as the Miami Dolphins at number 42. They are desperate. That's arguably their most pressing need. So they're going to be in the market for help at the position. And the Jaguars, maybe the Panthers. So there's a lot of possibilities. How about the Dallas Cowboys? It looks like Jason Witten might be retiring and going to the broadcast booth. They all of a sudden have a huge need at tight end. They're picking at number 50. So I guess I'll be surprised if he doesn't come off the board in the second round.
No Cowboys. No Cowboys. Please, no Cowboys. He's Scott Wright, the president of DraftCountdown.com. For all you draft nuts out there, you should be on DraftCountdown.com the entire rest of this draft, including tonight and tomorrow. Tonight and tomorrow. And then Scott will be back on Monday's show to recap the entire draft with us right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. You're the man, Scott. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Enjoy the draft. We'll talk to you next week.